All right, so we are in week 3 officially, and week 3 talks about methods, and I have kind of been talking about methods for the past 2 weeks to warm me up. So there's not going to be a whole lot of new things today, except I kind of left the returning things for methods. Oh, and this chapter talks about static variables, so I'll tell you about that. Kind of left the static variables out up to this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the lecture from last week, also known as dog.java, and start from there. Save as. Okay. And let me go back to week 3. Week 3. Alright, so let's have a look at the summary that I have about chapter 3. Using method mens, overloading, calling methods, swapping values, static variables, scope and visibility. Alright, so let's go look at the program. So this is from last week. Alright, a whole lot of yeah, I kind of talked about these different instance variables. Okay, so this is dog Java. All right. So I'm going to work with this thing here. So we have a class dog, and in that class we have one property or variable, weight, and we have your constructor, you have your other constructor, and you have a couple of methods. And this chapter officially starts talking about methods, even though you kind of have been using them for a while. And so where did I begin? Okay, so let me tell you about the different kinds of variables. And we kind of talked about this last time, right? What's an instance variable? Instance variables are the ones that are the class variables. Well, they're not really called the class variables, but they're declared inside of the class and outside of any other methods. Okay, so that means that every object that we create is going to have one of these variables for itself, right? So every dog is going to have its own weight, which is going to be different for the different dogs. That's an instance variable. Okay, so it's declared inside of a class, outside of all the other methods, and it does not have the word static in front of it. Okay. In addition to this, we have variables which are inside of the parentheses of the methods, and those are called parameter variables. Okay, so for example, this is just a quick review. What's a constructor? A constructor is a method which has the same exact name as your class. So this method, dog, with parentheses, right? Every method has parentheses, and has this method, the constructor, has the same exact name as your class. Okay. The convention in Java is to have your classes with capital letters and variables with lowercase letters. Okay, and the regular methods are with lowercase letters. Not that it really matters, right? We can have the classes lowercase, you can have the variables uppercase. That's just the convention. Okay, so anyway, in here we have a constructor, and what is a constructor? It is a method which you use once you're creating an object. Okay, so the class is your template for an object. So we're basically saying there's going to be something called a dog, and it's going to have a weight. And from that template, we're going to create many different objects, also known as instances. And each instance is going to have basically the properties that we have defined in this blueprint or template called class. Okay? And as soon as we create a new object, and where do we create these new objects? Where do I have them? Right here, right? So I created a couple of objects. So the first object that I created was a German Shepherd, and we say dog, which is the name of the class, German Shep, which is the name of the instance or the object, and is equal to new dog. And this is how you create a new object. Okay, that's the syntax in Java. So when you say new dog, as soon as you do this, that automatically calls your default constructor, right? The default constructor does not have anything inside the parentheses, and it is used to give initial values to your variables, okay, to your instance variables. If you do not write a default constructor, Java will write one for you, and it will make everything 0, okay? So if you don't want to see a 0 as your initial values for your variables, create your own constructor and give it different values. So that is the purpose of this right here. Okay, so when we say new dog, that calls the default constructor. And underneath here, I have another dog type, corgi. I actually Googled it. I know what it looks like now. Is equal to new dog 20. Right. So notice this time, this was the old one, dog. Nope, nothing inside of the parentheses. But now I'm saying new dog 20. So when I call the new dog, this calls the default constructor. When I say new dog with a 20 in between the parentheses, that calls my explicit constructor. Okay, so the default constructor always makes a new dog with a weight of 99, and the explicit constructor makes a new dog of whatever weight I want to give it. Right, so if I give it a 20, right, here I'm giving it a 20. This 20 actually has its own name, and do you remember from your other programming class what this one is called? What is this called? Starts with an A. Starts with an A and ends with argument. Okay? Alright, so this is argument, and this is the variable that we pass into the method. Okay? So this right here, well, let's get to that later. So we're passing the value 20, the argument is 20, and the variable new weight becomes equal to 20 as soon as I call it. So when I do new dog 20, new weight, which is this variable right here, becomes equal to 20, and then weight here is equal to 20, so that means I have changed the default weight for the dog, just like I did with the default constructor. Okay? The variable that accepts the value is called a parameter. The value that we're sending in is called the argument. The parameter variable is a slightly different kind of variable from the instance variable. Right? The instance variable, which is declared before and outside all the other methods, can be accessed and used inside of any of the other methods. But a parameter variable can only be used inside of the method where it was declared. Okay? So in this particular case, the int new weight was declared inside of the parentheses of the dog constructor, which means the new weight variable can only be used here. What does that mean? That means that if I go in here and I say, oh well, new weight is equal to 10, right? And I try to compile this thing, if I do Control B, right? See how it complains? Cannot find symbol, variable, new weight, blah, blah, right? So it tells you it doesn't know what it is, okay? So it doesn't know what it is because new weight belongs to this method, not in this one, okay? And that is an example of a local variable. Okay, so I can't do this here because the scope, and that's something that, you know, this chapter talks about, because the scope of variable new weight is only the method where it was declared. Okay? So where's the scope? Can you tell me where's the scope of, what is the scope for new weight? Which method?
The new weight method.
the dog constructor and the chain, wait, that's it. That's the only one. Okay? There's no new weight method. So the scope of variable new weight is only here. Okay? Only in here, in between these curly brackets. That's the only place I can use it. Okay? So, and then scope refers to where the variable can be used. So what is the scope of this variable? The weight variable.
Is it 99 that you said? Is it 99 what you said with the initial weight?
No, that's what it's equal to. Scope refers to where can it be used. Right? Refers to where the variable. Huh? Anywhere inside that class, exactly. So I have declared this thing before and outside of all the other methods, and as you can see, I'm using this weight variable everywhere. Okay? So anywhere inside the class's methods, right? I can't go use it in my main. Okay? If I go in there and I say, let's try it, new weight, right, is equal to 10. Okay? And I try to build this thing. No, line 79, error cannot find symbol. Why is that? Because, so it's not in every method. You cannot use it in the main. So you can use the instance variable, right? This variable can be used in all of these methods, everything up to the main. Okay, main is just like a special method which runs the program. So you have to declare the variable in it if you want to use it. Okay. I could use this variable inside here, right? So technically, I think if I go in there and say public int weight, I could technically use my variable in the main. I can go in there and I say, all right, dog is equal to new dog, right? And I can say a dog dot, what is it, weight is equal to 10. I could do that. If I build this, no problem. Okay? So the only way for me to access this instance variable is if I create an instance. Okay? Does that make sense? So the only way to access instance variable is if I create an instance. Okay? And by the way, what I just did is considered bad practice. Okay, this is not a good idea. Why? Because anyone can create an instance and then accidentally can go in there and say, well, new weight is equal to hello world. Right? Wait, hold on, that's not a weight, it's a string. Right? Or a character, the way I wrote it. Right? So in order for me to prevent this kind of monkey business from happening, what I have to do is I have to make my variables private. Okay? So the idea of this is I don't want to have the outside world have access to my instance variables. The only way that I should be able to change the properties of my dog so that I prevent this kind of stuff from happening is if I do it with the predefined by me methods, right? So I have a German Shepherd, I want to change the weight, and I'm going to be changing the weight to 130, and then inside my change weight method, I could do things like, well, if my weight is greater than 0, right? Something like that. And maybe I want, and you don't know ifs yet, but don't worry about it, we'll learn them. And my weight is, let's say, less than 200 or something like that. So basically I have a restriction for what kind of a value can be inside of the weight variable, and only if it falls within that range of values, if it's between 0 and 200, can I change the value of weight. Okay, and that's the purpose why you don't want to be able to do this kind of stuff, because you could accidentally mess up the contents of your dog. Okay? So that's that. And so now you know a little bit. Okay, let's make it 10. Not a good idea because you can accidentally provide a wrong value for weight. Alright, weight should only be changed through the change weight method, right? Which ensures that only a good value was entered. That kind of stuff. Okay? So you should not directly change the properties of instances or objects. You should use the methods that you defined for those objects to change them. That's the Java way. Okay? Alright, so we know about instance variables, we know about parameter variables, and we also know about local variables. I mentioned local variables last time. What's a local variable? Yes, a local variable belongs to the method where it was declared. All right, so I have declared this variable inside of the public static void main. So what is the scope of this variable? Public static void main. So scope refers to where can the variable be used, right? The scope of this variable, right? The scope of variable num is the main method. Okay, so it can only be used inside of the main. That's why the scope is the main, right? Where can it be seen? Where can it be used? Okay, so far, what kind of variables do we know about? Parameter variables, local variables, instance variables. Okay, and I asked you last time, is a parameter variable a local variable? Yes, right? Okay, so it can only be used inside of the method where it was declared, so it's local. Okay, otherwise it will be a, I guess you can call it global or whatever, but I wouldn't call it that. It's an instance variable. Okay, so instance, parameter variable, local variable, scope. Those are some of the things that this chapter talks about. And I'm going to erase this stuff here because I don't think it's very relevant to what I'm telling you about today. All this accumulation business, gone. Okay. Okay, so let me introduce another kind of a variable, and that is a static variable. Okay, so what is a static variable? A static variable is also referred to as a class variable, and it's a kind of variable that can be used by all the objects, or it is shared by all the objects. Okay, so each dog has its own weight, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a variable which is going to be shared by all the dogs. So if one dog changes it, changes for all the other dogs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say a static int number of dogs. Okay, there. So that's a static variable. Okay, so what's a static variable? I already mentioned it, already just told you. So static variable is also known as a class variable. All right, static variables are shared by all objects / instances. Okay, so if one object changes number of dogs, this changes the value of the variable for all the objects. Okay? So let's do an example. So what I'm going to do actually is, so in a static variables are exist before any objects or instances have been created. So in here, in my main, where was this thing? So in order for me to use the wait, I need to create an instance, right? If I try to do this, wait is equal to 0, right? No good. It doesn't know what that is. And actually, if you look at the error, it says non-static variable cannot be referenced from static context. That's kind of a misleading, a little bit like, half of that error message is useful, the other half is not very useful. Okay, but basically it tells you that, it kind of suggests that this could be fixed by making the variable weight static. Okay, so now let's look at if I did this to my, what did I call it, number of dogs. Alright, so I go in there and say, alright, number of dogs is equal to 99. Okay, I compile this thing, no problem. All right, so you can access a static variable as static variable can be accessed without an instance. Okay, you don't need to create an instance in order for you to be able to change the, this variable called number of dogs, because it exists before any of the instances were created. And it can be changed and accessed without an instance creation. Okay? All right. So another thing that I want to do is, before I make it equal to something, let's say I do system.out.println, and I'm going to say number of dogs is equal to plus number of dogs, right? And I'm just going to comment this out for a second. So, well, I don't have to. So if I run this program, what value do you think this is going to be equal to? Yeah, it'll be 0, because Java is nice. Okay, so no, it's not garbage. That's not C++. Okay, so a static variable. Well, actually, let's run it and see if I'm not lying to you. So go to the desktop. All right. And let's compile this thing. Java C dog Java. Oops. Java dog. All right. So you can see it right here. Number of dogs 0. Okay. Maybe I need to change the highlight color or something, whatever. Okay, so it starts at 0. So a static variable is automatically set to 0. Okay, you don't have to even put it in the constructor. Okay, I could. Okay, and that's the next thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, all right, well, number of dogs. So every time I create a dog, right? Every time I create a new dog, which is what the purpose of this constructor is, right? We only call this thing when we create a new one. Okay, every time I create a new dog, I want to increase the number of dogs. Okay, so how am I going to do this? I can say number of dogs is equal to number of dogs plus 1. Right? What were other ways to say this? I can also say number of dogs plus equals 1. Right? If you've done Python, you know this. If you've done C++, you know this. And if you've done Python, you don't know this one. Plus plus. That does not exist in Python. Okay? That's something that we inherit from the C++ language based on which this Java language is created. Okay, so three different ways to do this. You can either say this, you can say this, whoops, or you can say the thing on the bottom. So it's basically increasing the variable, add one to the old value of number of dogs. And what's the old value of number of dogs? You saw it was 0, right? Before I even create anything, you saw that it was 0. Okay, so then I go in there and I make a new dog, right? Dog is equal to new dog. As soon as I do this, what is the value of number of dogs? I'm going to take this out. All right, so this one here shows a 0. Let's show you see it. Alright, so that's a 0 here. Okay, so let's say next thing is I want to see number of dogs again. So I have created, let's see if it works. So what is going to be the number of dogs here? Should be 1, hopefully. Keep your fingers crossed, because you never know. There it is. Alright, it's 1. Alright, and then you don't have to access it just this way. You can also do number of dogs. I can do a dog dot number of dogs. All right. So you could use an instance to do this. Hopefully, let's see it. All right, there you go. So you could use an instance to access the number of dogs, but you don't have to. Okay. So this basically, huh?
Is that just more work?
Well, I mean, it's just another way to do the same thing, basically. All right, so I'm just going to comment this out. And then I go and I create a new dog, German Shepherd. All right, and then as soon as I create a new dog, now what happens to my number of dogs? Increases by 1. All right, so this one shows 1. This one was 1, and then if I do this here, now it's 2. Okay, and then if I do, let me use the German Shepherd. Actually, I'm going to get the German Shepherd. All right, dot number of dogs plus this number of dogs. All right, just to illustrate a little better that it changes for all the instances. Okay, so even though it's a variable that changes for all the instances. And then when I do this, what is going to be the value of my number of dogs? Same as before, because I didn't do this in there. Okay, so it will make sense for me to put this stuff in here too. All right, increase the number of dogs in there. All right, and then we'll go to 3. Okay. So if I go and do, whoops, let's copy this one. I go in there and do this here, then it goes to 3. Okay, so does that make sense what a static variable is? There you go. All right, so what kind of a variable is, all right, let's do this. What is the scope for a static variable or a class variable? Remember, the instance variable had a scope, all these methods except the main. So what's the scope of my static variable or class variable?
Would it be the number of dogs?
Where can it be used?
In the class.
The whole class
Any methods.
and any methods. So if the instance variable can only be used in all these methods, right? And then if you want to use it, you can create an instance and then you can access it through the instance. Your static variable can be used anywhere in the class. That's why it's called a class variable. Okay, so the scope of a static variable is the whole freaking thing. Okay, so now we know now we know what scope is. Now we know the different kinds of variables: instance variable, static variable, parameter variables. What's a local variable? Variable that's declared inside of a method, right? And the scope of the instance variables and static variables. Any questions? Going once, going twice. All right. So let me see what else I want to tell you. Get rid of this. Scope and visibility. Public final static. Okay, final. If I put final in front of any variable, it's final. I can't change its variable. I mean, its content. It's constant basically, right? So if you want to create a constant which cannot be changed, the value of which cannot be changed, you can make it a final. Okay. In fact, I mean, just so you know, I mean, it kind of has nothing to do with anything, but just for FYI, there's two different ways to teach this class. One way is to do it the way I'm doing it, and the other way is to basically make everything static. And I can, and that's the way that MPC does it. Okay, MPC introduces Java with everything being static variables, and the reason for that is because if you have static variables, you don't have to introduce methods until later on. So I can do the conventional way of like, okay, this is a variable, this is input, this is output. Then we do the ifs and else's, and at some point we do the methods or the functions or whatever you want to call them. I do it differently, right? Because it kind of confuses. It might confuse you why what a static variable is if I just used it that way. So the way I'm doing it is I'm telling you, all right, here's the big picture. This is the class. These are the objects. These are the different kinds of variables, and then we do, now we do static. Okay, so there's different approaches to teach this. Anyway, so next thing I want to tell you. So that's the static variables. We know the different kinds of variables. Swapping values, I'll show you that in a second. Okay, we already know what algorithm is, right? Did I tell you? What's an algorithm? Instructions. Step-by-step instructions to solve a problem, right? You can have a recipe. That's an algorithm. Okay, all right, so returning values. I haven't told you anything about returning values yet, and which is why you can see that all these methods that I have been creating are void. And by the way, if you have been reading the book, if you got the book, you will notice that the book uses public in front of all this stuff, right? Public void. Okay, well, Java will automatically make this public without you saying it. Same thing with, class, public class. All right, so I'm just omitting this, save some real estate. So now the next thing is, let's discuss about the meaning of void. Okay, so what's void? From? Okay, good. Same thing as C++. So void is the return type of the method. Void means it does not return any value. Okay? This is something that does not exist in Python. So for those two of you Python folks, we didn't have that, right? And Python kind of figures things automatically, right? If you're trying to return something, well, then it's going to return something. If it doesn't, then it will be a void. Okay? But this is the way we do things in C and C++ and Java and a few other programming languages. So void means it does not return a value. All right? But actually, we've had this one here, the public string toString. That one actually returns something. Okay, but let's do something else. So I'm gonna go in there. I'm going to create another method. So see how we have a show wait here. I am going to make another variable, or method. I'm going to call it. What kind of a data type is wait int? So I'm going to say int, and I'll call it get weight. Okay. And then what is int? Maybe I should have moved it a little. There you go. Let me mess up my indentation for the sake of this example. All right. What is int? What does that tell you? Int is the return type. All right, and it means that the method will return an integer. Okay, so I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to say, all right, return weight, just like that, so that if I ever want to, see how I have the show weight here? All right, I'm going to do it another way. I'm going to say system.out.println, and I'm going to say, all right, the German Shepherd's weight is plus German Shep.get weight, like that. Okay? Any questions? So how is this going to work? I'm going to call my get weight here, my get weight method here. I'm on line 131 in my code, right? As soon as I get to this point and I call the method, I'm going to jump to the get weight, wherever that was, line 74, right? The code starts executing here at line 75. Then it goes to line 76. As soon as it gets to line 76, it grabs the contents of this variable weight and it returns back to where it was called, which is line 131. Okay, so we kind of jump back and forth. Any questions? Okay, so same thing that you've done in C++ or Python if you have done another programming language. And then this is how all the other methods work, right? So you basically, the program starts working from the main, and then as soon as you encounter a method call, like for example the constructor, you jump up to the definition of that method, right? So these are the definitions of a method, and then we execute everything that's inside of a curly bracket. As soon as I get to a return, what if I have a system.out.println hello world here? When will that show?
After the weight.
After the weight? Okay. Any other guesses? When will this line 77 show?
Actually, next to the weight. When I say the weight, then hello world.
Nope. What happens when you, huh?
I don't think it gets it because it's just looking for the weight. It's just going to that method and grabbing the weight in the main method.
That is correct, but I'm looking for a different wording.
The return tells you to exit.
Exactly. So as soon
as
exactly. All right. So as soon as you get to a return, you exit the method here. So this will never show. Will never show. Okay? So we call the get weight method, we get to the return, and then at this point, at line 76, we exit the method. And we return back to where we were called. Where were we called? We were called at line 131. So this piece right here just returns the value of the weight. That's it. We don't see the hello world ever. Okay? Any questions? All right. So that's the return business. Okay? And as you can see, there's an int, there's a void. You can also return a string, right? So this particular thing right here returns a string. You can return a double, you can return a character. That's about it. Okay? You can't return lists of things. Okay? Like Python, if you have done that. Questions? We're good? All right, because I'm running out of things to tell you. Let's do another one. Let's say let's do another one. I'm gonna say string object name, right? and I'm going to say system, oops, not system, return, and I'm going to say this is a dog object. Okay? And if I want to, let's call this one, so string object name, or let's call it class name. Class name. Okay? And then here, what I'm going to do is, right here, I'm going to call it, right after this a dog, I'm going to say, alright, a dog, what do I call it? Class name. Class name. Okay, and if I run this thing here, oops, what don't you like? I forgot my semicolon somewhere. Oh, damn it. Will never show. Yeah, system. Let me just take it out. Now it's happy. So you can't see Java is so particular that will actually generate an error message if you have that stuff in there. Okay? Missing return statements. I don't know about that. Okay? But I think what it's trying to tell you is that this will never show, something like that. So the more error messages you get before the program gets going, the better it is. Okay? You don't want the program to be running and then just some weird stuff to be happening, and then you have to go and figure out how to debug, you know, what went wrong. It's better for it to generate some kind of a error message before it starts going. Okay, so anyway, let's say, so I'm building this thing, it's working. So my question to you is, well actually let me run it. So a dog, Java dog. All right, so I'm calling the method here. I'm calling class name here, which is supposed to show me this is a dog object. But let me run it again. All right, it doesn't say this is a dog object anywhere. Why is that? I'm calling it right here at line 114. So how come it's not showing me that message? Yeah, there you go. All right. So what happens when I go to line 114? What happens? I am calling the class name method, which is this here, right? So it grabs this string, which is this is a dog object, and it literally brings it back like right here, like that.
And it just stays there.
And it's just okay. It's there, but then what? You should do like something like a system out print line, you know, show it. Okay, so instead of just calling it like this, I'm going to do a system that out that println, and then it's going to show it hopefully. All right, and then before when I had it like this, so you remember, right? This here shows nothing because we did not call it from inside of a println. Okay. So what does that mean? We're bringing back the string in here, but you don't get to see it because you don't show it. Okay? Make sense? All right. What else can I tell you about methods? I'm pretty much, that's all I can tell you. All right? Oh, and you can combine them. You can have a void. You already saw that there's a void with a parameter variable. You can have a return type and a parameter variable. You can have multiple parameter variables. If you have multiple parameter variables, like new age or whatever, you just separate them by commas, just like most other programming languages. Okay? So that's that. And what else? So that's the returning the value. Oh, one important thing to kind of point out is if I go in there and I do, let's do this. I'm going to say void no change, and well, I'll call it void something. So I don't give away the thing. All right, so this is int a, all right, a. And then in here I'm going to say a is equal to 100. Okay, so keep this in mind. That's what happens. In here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, a dog, and let me make a variable. Int a is equal to 0 or 99 again, whatever, 0. Okay, a dog dot something a. Okay, if I do system dot out dot println here, and I show you a equals plus a. What is the value of a here? 0. Sign language 0. Okay. Anyone disagree with this or agree with this? Why is it 0? So I'm
Because
yeah. Why?
Oh, because didn't you said it's 0?
I am setting it to 0, but then I'm passing it to this method called something, and then in the something I'm saying it's equal to 100. So why is it not 100?
isn't it printing out within the main int a equals 0, because you're not telling it in the system print out a, you're just saying a.
Right.
You're not saying print out the something a. Right.
Okay,
You're
well-
not telling it what method you want.
Okay, kind of. So the reason is this variable a, is different from the variable a, which is inside the something method. The variable a, which is inside the something method. All right. And it really helps if you took C++ and pointers. Remember, there are two different variables. There's two. So imagine an Excel spreadsheet, or not an Excel spreadsheet. So let's do it this way. So let me check something real quick. 1037. All right. So let's say imagine this. So you have variable, right? This is variable a, and there's another variable a. Okay? Location. This is inside the main. This one is inside something. Okay? And let's see if I can zoom in on this thing a little. Wow, it doesn't resize. That's nice. What the hell? Oh, wait. There we go. Okay, so this is my variable a. There's another variable a. One is inside the main, the other one is inside the something method. Okay, think of this as like a memory location. Okay, and fortunately for you, we don't get to mess around with memory locations in Java. It's kind of buried deep down under. Okay, it's a high-level language, similar to how we don't get to see the memory location of things in Python, but we do get to see the memory location of things in C++. And if this was C++, you would have something like 0x, I don't know, fd01f or something like that, right? So that's the memory location of this variable a. It's just someplace in memory. And if I wanted to talk about the other one, it will probably be some completely different address, right? It doesn't even have to be anything similar to this. It could be like 111, right? Different places in memory. Okay, so even though both of the variables are called the same exact thing, they're actually different. Okay, same but different. Any questions?
Doesn't it change this because the parameter, if we change the parameter to 10? What did you call for that?
If I change this to 10,
Yeah. Well, you set it to 10. Because you put the A in there, you already sent it. Oh,
I'm making it 100.
Oh, 100, yeah, that's
Yeah. Well, there's no relationship between this A here,
Yeah.
right? Even if I went in there and I say, well, int A here, right? And I say A is equal to 100. Either way, this is a variable which is different from the one in the main, right? So this is one variable that's called A, and this is a completely different variable that's called A. Okay, unlike C++ or C, where there is mechanisms in the language that will allow you to do things like, oh, I want to make this a pointer. Like, oh, okay, this is how you do it in C++. Put like a little asterisk in there, right? And then when you call this thing, you do like an %A, and that allows you to tell, okay, we're sending the memory address of A over, so that this variable A here is a pointer to that original same memory location. So changing this here allows you to change the one in the main. Good news in Java is there's no pointers of any kind. They're gone. They just said, you know what, pointers suck, we're not going to use them, done. Okay, and I love it. I don't like pointers at all. Okay, how can we do things like that? Well, we can. There's different ways. All right, if you take the data structures in Java, the CSIS 27, and if you take the data structures with C++, I teach both of them. You're going to see that, in C++ we have to create a pointer so that you can create like a linked list. In Java, you don't need pointers at all. You still make a linked list anyway. Okay? All right. So bottom line is, what we're doing here, actually, is since in C++ there's no pointers, there's no pass by pointer, there's no pass by reference. Everything is passed by value. Well, there's like some pass by reference when we do arrays and stuff like that, but that's just the default. We haven't done arrays yet. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are passing the value of A. Okay, so we're not passing A itself. What we're passing is just basically 0. So whether I put A or I put 0, same thing. Okay, I'm simply passing the value of a variable into the method, and then this other variable A receives it. Now A is equal to something else, but this doesn't have any effect on little a here. Okay, and if you don't believe me, let's run it, and you can see that A is right there. A is 0. Right? A is 0.
So A is getting 0 from int A equals 0.
Yes. A stays at 0. We passed the 0 into the something method.
But if you change the printout statement to indicate that you want to get the something A.
I can't, because the something A is not. Well, I guess I can create a return here and stuff like that, and then I can show you the something A. Yeah, I can do that. Right.
Because if there's no return to something, you can show value.
Right. Right. If I wanted to show what this is, I could do a system out print line in here and show you this thing here, or I can just return.
Not because it's void, you can't show
No.
anything.
Yeah, the only way for me to show this value here is if I did a system out print line here. Yeah. Or I can change the return type, make it an int, and then I can return it to the main, and I can show it to there. Yes. Yes.
Alex, you're always sending a copy in. Is there any way to modify your original?
Not a regular variable. Not a regular variable. No, it's not meant to change these. It's kind of like it's part of the language itself, so that you can't, like, one method can't mess up another method's variables. That's the idea. Yeah. I mean, you could create a return here. Yeah, you could say, all right, return A, change the return type here to int, and then here I can say, I can say A is equal to this thing. I can do that. Then it'll bring the value that I changed, but it's kind of pointless. Like, why would I do that kind of thing? Okay, but yeah, I mean, there's ways around things. Instead of using a pointer, you can do it different ways. So that's basically it. But the main thing that I wanted to tell you is that when you're passing a value like this, when a variable, you're passing the value of the variable. You're not passing the variable itself. and as you saw, even if I change the variable, which happens to have the same name as the one in the main, they're actually two different variables. Changing one does not change the other. Okay, that's that. Okay, so I guess let's do one more. So you said change A. It will be kind of not the smartest example. I'll do it here. Int something to int A. Right? It's pointless, but I'll do it. Here, I'll say A is equal to 100. I'm going to say return A, right? And then when I go and I do here, I can do A is equal to A dog something 2, and then I'm going to pass the A over, right? And then when I do this, what's the value of A? 100. Right? So this one stays at 0. A is equal to 0. This one goes to A is equal to 100. Does that make sense? But it's a dumb example, just for the record. But you wanted to know how it could be done. There you go. All right. So that's one thing. Another thing I want to tell you about is, and that's kind of an interesting thing to do. So the question is this, and basically this assignment asks you to do this. You're going to create one object, and you're going to make another object, and you're going to swap their properties. One object is going to assume the properties of another object. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to do a new one, right? Let's do a fresh one. So I'm going to say class swaps, right? And swaps is going to have a name, string name, okay? And maybe I should have, what are the methods that I should have for this thing? Maybe I should have a constructor, right? Swaps, and let's give it a string new name. Okay, and then I'm going to say new name is equal to name. Okay, and then I'm going to have my public static void main, string args. All right, so we're going to have two objects. Well, first of all, let's do this. I'm going to have a string A is equal to A, and I'm going to have a string B is equal to B. Okay? So, I go in there and I do, let me save this. This is swaps, Java. Okay. All right, so this is my swaps, and I'll just show you how to swap values, right, basically. So I want to do this.
Wait, that swap sounds weird. New name equals name, not the other way around.
You're right. Name is equal to new name. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do here is I want to swap, let's call it something else. This is 1, this is 2. Okay, I want to swap the values of variables A and B. How do I do that? You got to do a temp. Okay, so if I just did this, just for those of you who are learning this for the first time. Right? Let's say you have A is equal to B. A equals B. If I do this, A is equal to 2, and B is equal to 2. All right? So I lost the A. Okay? And if I don't do this, if I do it the other way, if I say B is equal to A, then what happens? I have B is equal to 1. Right? and A is also equal to 1. Okay, so whether I do it this way or the other way, I lose one of the variables, one of the contents. So, like you said, we want to do a temp variable. Okay, so this one here loses contents of A. This one here loses contents of B. Okay, but what if I do this? If I say string temp, and could be temp, could be whatever else you want, right? I'm just calling it temp. So before I do either one of these, I'm going to say temp is equal to A. I could also do B if I want to. Then I'm going to say A is equal to B. Then I'm going to say B is equal to temp. And if we go step by step through these, so temp is equal to A, so temp is equal to what value? What here? 1. Capital 1. Right? And then if I go to the next one, A is equal to what? 2. And then if I do B here is equal to what? 1. So what happened? It started as a 1, 2, and now it's a 2, 1. So I swapped their values. Okay? So this is your swap example. Swap example.
I know it would be pointless, but could you do string C equals 10?
C?
Yeah, if you did like another, if you did string C equals to 10.
For what purpose?
It's just,
Sure.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
So
sure.
pointless, but-
Yeah. There's other swaps too. You basically make two different temp variables, and then there's a swap with one
It's
less.
probably the easiest.
Yeah, this is the easiest. So you can either do it this way, right? Or you can do it another way. You can say another swap example. How could I swap? Now I want to swap them again. How would I do it? I do temp. Let's do it another way. Is equal to B. B is equal to A, and then A is equal to temp. Okay, and now similar to before, temp is equal to what was B? B is 1. Right here, B is equal to A, which was B is equal to 2. Right, and now my temp, A is equal to temp, which was 1, so A is equal to 1. Right, so another swap. That makes sense? Any questions? Okay, so now that we know this, here's what I want to do. I'm going to create. Maybe I should have a couple of methods to show the names of the things. So let's do this. Void show name, and I'm going to say let's return it. Let's have a string get name. Okay, and this is going to return name. That's it. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create 2 objects. Okay. So let's say I'm going to create an object me. Me is equal to new swaps. Whoops. Object swaps. Swaps me is equal to new swaps, and this is me. And
Or
huh?
do that, correct the new and same up top. It should be new.
Which line?
Swaps, go to swaps.
7.
Line 7.
All the way up to scale.
What about it?
Change the name equal to new.
Oh, there's an S in there.
Take out the S.
Okay. All right. Okay. So then I'm going to make a new object. Swaps u is equal to new swaps. Give me a name.
John.
Huh?
John.
John. All right. There you go. So what I want to do is I want to swap the names of me and you. Okay? And if you understand this, by the way, you got object-oriented programming. Okay? So, and what I want to do is this. I want to do this. So I'm going to create a method. I want to do it like this. I want to say me.swap u. Okay? How am I going to do that? That's the goal of this exercise. That's the goal of 3.4, the one that I just deleted. Okay, so let's start writing this method. So it's going to be a void, it's going to be a swap, and in there I'm going to be doing this kind of a swapping thing that I showed you here. Okay, so first of all, what kind of a parameter variable is this method supposed to accept? I'm giving you a clue here. So I'm saying it's supposed to be called like this. It's supposed to be me.swap u. Well, is u a string? Swaps. Okay, good. So I have to send in a variable of the swaps type. Okay, I'm going to call it another. Okay? Alright, and then what am I going to do? Maybe I should have another one. I forgot. Let's do this. String, no, void, set name. Right? And the set name is going to be similar to this one here. Right? So I have a get name, I have a set name, right? At least there should be two different kinds of methods for each object. One to get the information, the other one is just to change the information of the object. Okay, so I'm going to be using this kind of a business here. Alright, so I'm going to say, alright, let's make a new variable, string temp. Why can't I just do temp here? Temp equals something? Will that work?
No, it's void, right? So
It's not that.
We're not working with strings anymore, we're working with swaps.
Yeah, I know, but if I was, at some point I'm going to have to get a, I will be working with strings because we're going to be changing the names of the objects. Alright? But my question is, alright, if I run this, if I compile it, why is it complaining about temp here? Line 22, temp? What?
What type is it? At the end, just string.
Okay, but there's one here. Why is it not working?
Scope.
Scope. Okay, good. All right. Just making sure you remember from 20 minutes ago. Right? So this temp is declared inside of the main. If I try to do this here, it would not know what temp is because it's not declared inside my swaps method. So I'm going to say, all right, string temp. All right, and then it will work. No problem. Okay. It's not going to be equal to hello. Okay? So I'm going to say temp this. All right? And then I'm going to say temp is equal to, let's say I'm going to get, how am I going to get the name from the another? So by the way, another refers to you. All right? Just so you know. All right? This one here refers to you. Yes? So how am I going to get the name of you and put it in temp? Another dot what?
we not swap.
I'm trying to get the name.
Not name.
Get name. Alright, so I'm going to get the name from this. So you is equal, you is John, right?
Yeah.
I'm passing you into this swaps method, into the swap method,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm saying the string temp is equal to another dot get name. So does that make sense? Okay. Alright. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change my name. Okay? What's my name? Just name. Okay? I'm going to say name is equal to actually let's change the let's make this I'm going to change the name of the another. Okay, so I have to change the name of the other to my name. So I'm going to say another. How do I change the name of another? Set name. Set name, and I'm going to change it to my name, which is just name. Yes? Does that make sense? So name refers, and let's do it another way. I'm going to say this name, because I got to confuse you a little more with the this. Okay, so what does this refer to? You think? If another refers to you, what do you think this refers to? Me. Okay, this refers to me. Okay, so what is this? This refers to which is the object that called the method. So which object calls this method? In this particular case, it's me. So that's what this is. This refers to me. Okay, we talked about this in C++, right? All right, you got a head start. Okay, and then the next thing that I got to do is I'm going to say now I have to change my name to the other name. I just say this name is equal to what?
You're gonna change it to what? What do you mean?
So at this point, let's walk through this. At this point, temp is equal to Alex. No, this one is John. All right. So now you dot name is equal to John. So I have to change. Well, that's confusing. Hold on. No, this is Alex. Yes. Okay. So now I have to change my name to John, right? Where's John stored? It's stored inside temp. And I say temp, and that's you swap. Okay?
Could you do another dot get name? Would that be the same thing?
Get name for what?
If you wanted to switch. Oh, you're trying to get.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is one way to do this, and this thing is actually optional. You don't have to have it. If you got rid of the this, it'll work the same exact way. Okay, but I'm going to leave it in there, just so you know, because this shows up all over the place if you're dealing with object-oriented programming. Whether you're talking about, even Python, I think, has this. I haven't used much of it, but yeah, it's in there. Okay, so
Does it make it clearer or more readable to have the this in this?
yeah.
What's your preference?
Yeah, I like the this. So like it's like an implied if you omit it. Yeah, the default is it's in there. Does that make sense? You sure? All right. And that's the one. So now you know how to swap values, and you know how to swap one object's properties with another object. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, let's just test this thing. I'm going to do a system out print ln. I'm going to say me is plus me dot get name. All right, and I'm going to do the same for the other one. The other one is you is new language. Get name. All right. Okay, and then I'm going to show you the thing after it. I do a swap. Whoops. Swapping. Whoops. Okay, save, build. Still happy. Keep your fingers crossed. This is now swaps. Java C swaps. Java swaps. There you go. All right. Me is Alex, you is John. Swapping. Me is John, you is Alex. Got it? Okay. So one more time. Me is the object which is calling the swap method. Into the swap method, we're passing the u object. Okay. Once we go into the swaps method, this refers to me, which is the object that called this thing. Right? So me calls it, and that's what this refers to, the object which called it. And then the other one is just another. Another is the one that we send over, which is you. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns?
So for 3.4...
That's it. That's your answer.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, in the past, I've been teaching this thing for like 6 years. A lot of students don't get this. Let's say majority of students don't get this exercise, and so at some point I said, all right, hold on, let me just post the freaking solution so they can at least copy it. Okay? But this time I didn't, so you gotta watch the video. Okay? Yeah, evil. Dr. Evil.
So do you want us to also, so we're just going to submit, because the previous 3.3 is already named and use names already.
3.3 is
If you go back, it's going to be...
3.4 sample program is a different one.
Okay.
This one here is, if you notice, there's a swap. It's basically someone swap, and what it does is it just it swaps the first and last name.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, there's this one here has first and last name, and then when you do the swap for this particular program, and this one is just a sample program that's in the book. All right, so the exercises go like, all right, here's this sample program, and then he goes to the next one, and it tells you, all right, do this. All right, modify names Java to have only one name, variable name, which is what I did. All right, there's only one name and only one variable name. There's no two names. And then rewrite the swap method so that it accepts a names as a parameter and swaps the value referenced by the parameter with the value referenced by the object used when the method is called. So for example, the method A name swap B name should switch the values contained in the object A name and B name. And I show you how to do, basically here's the main, write the rest. Okay, and I know it's confusing, but now there's a video. Okay?
And then for exercise 159, do you want us to submit that as well, or just...
This is 159.
Oh, okay. I think
Yeah, I pretty much copied it verbatim from the book.
Okay.
I did copy it exactly word for word from the book. All right, so that is pretty much all I want to tell you about week 3, which is the different kinds of variables, swapping things, and yeah, there's a chapter 3 test, quote unquote. It's not really a test, it's a super basic baby program, which asks you to make a method called vol, which returns has 3 arguments. You need to know what an argument is, right? The values that we send into, or the variables that we send into. So going back to this here, all right? This is the argument. All right? This here is the argument. All right? U is the argument here, and when we have the dog, this was the argument. Where is this? All right, this is A is the argument. Okay, the variable that we put inside the parentheses is the argument. All right, so that's all I got. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to upload the dog Java, the continuation of the dog. All right, but I'm not going to upload the swaps. All right, for the swaps, gotta watch the videos. Hopefully you took some notes. Okay. That's all. Any questions?
Is the computer science club started yet?
Computer Science Club, good question. So if you just Google Computer Science Club, you're going to find out that we're actually top of the heap, on top of Davis. I'm the Computer Science Advisor. All right, 2 of the 3 Gavilan College scholarships were awarded to my students this year. Right, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I was on the committee. All right, and my students were not even eligible to begin with, but they got it. Anyway, so the club meets, where is this thing? Officially Tuesdays in LS 106 from 12:45 to 1:45. that's what they decided on. Yeah, I guess that's what works with the president and the vice president and the secretary's schedule. Any of you can make it? Okay, come over. I'll give you extra credit if you need it. And if you don't, no big deal. It'll be great. Maybe you'll get some free money. The club has done a few interesting things other than these fundraisers, which are kind of whatever. I got them in the news last year. They've went to a bunch of events this year. These are the guys who went to Silicon Hacks in Fremont, May 2017. And these are some of the programs that they wrote, the apps. Right, I actually kind of like the first one better, but the second one is the one that won the award. Right, the first one was basically if you have one of those Fitbits, and if you have like some kind of a heart arrhythmia condition and your heart rate drops under a certain threshold, the app sends a message to somebody who's close to you to save your life. Right, this person is dying. Right, that kind of stuff. I thought it was awesome. Right, but what happened was they went in there and they wrote this beautiful app which works. But you're supposed to use the APIs of the sponsors. So like Facebook has APIs, or Google, or whoever's sponsoring the event has their own APIs that you're supposed to use to make this thing work. And if you don't use them, you don't win, right? So the president of the club, Jaron, won for some kind of an app that lets you vote using Bitcoin encryption, the Bitcoin algorithm. It kind of sends your votes to everybody, so it prevents voter fraud. And some of the things they won this year. So they've won $1,450 as far as I know in attending these events. This is the little drone that we flew, right? That's me right there. There's some other pictures that I actually took off. They're a bit more incriminating with the drone. Some of the other things we did with it. Yeah, so if you need help with, there was one student, this guy right there, he said, my friend asked me to build him a computer and I ordered all these parts, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, just come to the club, we'll help you. Right? So we built the thing for him, and then some other things too. So yeah, come over and join the club. Get some of these officer positions are available. We have a new president, new vice president. I think Marisol is still a treasurer. I think the project manager position is available. There's some other ones too. Okay? Yeah. Rebecca's still here. Yeah. What's your official title for the club? Hi. Yeah. What are you? Member?
Yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
but I'm not in the AHTC anymore, so.
All right. Whatever. I'll leave it like it is. False advertisement. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, come join us Tuesdays, LS 106. For the online students, I'm going to make, Jaron suggested some kind of a forum or whatever for the online students to log in and participate. So we'll have that going pretty soon. I'll post it in here. And yeah, that's all there is for today. All right, club. All right, so I'll stop the recording.